Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and honestly misunderstood systems inside the human body, the gut-brain axis. Over the next 7 minutes or so, we're going to build a really wholesome, complete understanding of how this incredible interconnected system actually works. We're going straight to the source material to decode how your gut and your brain are just constantly influencing each other. And as you'll see, understanding this connection is absolutely crucial for your digestion, your mood, your stress levels, and, well, your overall health.
So let me ask you this. Is the brain really the sole boss of your body? I mean, most of us grew up with this exact mental model, right? We imagine the brain sitting way up there in the skull like an almighty CEO, just barking orders downward while the rest of the body, including the gut, just blindly follows along. But actually, the science tells us a totally different story. That top-down view? It's completely outdated.
All right, Section 1, two control centers, a continuous conversation. To really grasp what's happening here, we need a major shift in perspective. Your body doesn't just have one boss, it actually has two co-managers.
Look at the old view, this idea of a one-way command chain. Now contrast that with the new view, which is the reality of the situation. The gut and the brain are actually co-managers running the exact same company. The gut isn't just a passive food tube, it's literally packed with its own intricate neural network, the enteric nervous system, along with heavy immune activity and microbes that are constantly sending signals upward. Honestly, it often feels like our stomachs have a mind of their own, right? Well, biologically speaking, they kind of do. Meanwhile, the brain isn't just dictating from above. It's constantly adjusting its own instructions based on the signals coming up from the gut. It's a continuous, two-way feedback loop.
Moving on to part 2, the communication loop, where signals move both ways. Getting a handle on this bidirectional flow is basically your anchor for this entire explainer. Let's look at exactly how these two co-managers actually talk to each other to keep you functioning day to day.
Think of a really simple, everyday analogy. The thermostat in your house. The room temperature sends information to the thermostat, and then the thermostat sends instructions back to the heater or the AC. Neither side does the job alone. One side measures the environment, the other side adjusts the system, and as a result, the whole house stays perfectly in balance.
So let's see how this builds into the biological loop inside you. It basically goes like this. Step 1, your gut reports internal conditions up to the brain, largely through the vagus nerve. It acts just like the sensor dashboard in your car, letting the brain know if it's full, if food is moving, or if, something is irritating it. Step 2, your brain interprets that data. But the brain isn't just a passive receiver, it's more like an air traffic controller. It takes the gut's report and asks, okay, am I safe right now? Am I stressed? Do I need energy? Then step 3, based on that context, the brain adjusts the body's state. It might slow down digestion if you're in danger, or speed it up if you're relaxed. And finally, step 4, the gut responds back to those changes with brand new signals. The loop just keeps going.
But here's where it gets kinda nuanced. Fast communication is definitely not the same thing as deep interpretation. Imagine hearing a car alarm going off. The alarm is a fast signal that tells you something happened, but it doesn't tell you if a thief is breaking in or if a heavy truck just rumbled by. Your gut works the exact same way. It might send a super fast signal of discomfort. That is real data, but your brain still has to assign meaning to it based on your overall state. That is exactly why a little flutter in your stomach can feel entirely different when you're calm versus when you're super anxious.
All right, number 3, channels of conversation, multiple pathways. So how are these messages actually traveling back and forth? If the body only had one road for communication, a single traffic jam would literally break the whole system. Instead, they're communicating simultaneously across a bunch of multiple channels.
So, we've got 4 main overlapping communication channels. First up, nerves. These act like a dedicated phone line for really fast, immediate signals about things like stretch or pressure. Second, chemical messengers like serotonin and dopamine. Think of these as text messages or group announcements. They're a bit slower, but they shape the broader tone and state of your body throughout the day. Third, immune signals. Because the gut is a huge immune zone, these act like a smoke alarm, instantly alerting the brain to danger, irritation, or inflammation. And finally, the microbes, which act like the active residents of the neighborhood, shaping the environment itself.
Which brings us nicely to Section 4, the internal ecosystem. The gut is more than just a pipe. That last channel, the microbes, brings us to a really crucial realization. To truly understand the gut-brain axis, we have to stop looking at the gut as just a plumbing pipe that moves material and start looking at it as a bustling, interactive environment. Think of it like a really busy transit hub. The real game changer in this puzzle is your microbiome. These trillions of microbes are not just passive passengers along for the ride. No way. They are active residents, and let's be honest, sometimes very demanding roommates. They break down your food, they interact with your immune system, and they physically influence the local conditions of the gut. And by doing all of that, they actively shape the signals that ultimately get sent up to your brain. Your internal ecosystem literally changes the very nature of the conversation.
Let's ground all this science in a real-world story. Imagine someone named Ava. She's sitting down to eat a totally normal meal, but she's just had an incredibly stressful, awful day at work. Step 1. Her brain is already in a state of high vigilance. Because of that stress, Step 2, her brain actually alters her body's resources, making her gut way more sensitive and slowing down her digestion. Step 3, her gut's immune signaling becomes more reactive to the food she's eating. The result? Ava doesn't just get a stomachache. Her whole body feels unsettled, tense, and just exhausted. The meal itself was perfectly fine, but the state of her system changed the entire experience.
And that leads us into number 5, a systems approach. Viewing the whole picture. Ava's story shows us exactly why we need to zoom out. When you finally understand this rich, interconnected loop of nerves, chemicals, immune cells, and microbes, it changes absolutely everything about how you view your daily health and well-being.
It really requires a total identity shift. For years, we've been asking the wrong questions. We try to isolate our symptoms, right? We ask, is my poor focus a brain issue? Or is this bloating just a gut issue? But a systems thinker looks at it completely differently. Because the gut and the brain co-regulate each other, you have to stop isolating parts and start asking, what state is the whole system in right now?
Which brings us to my absolute favorite quote from our source material. The gut-brain axis is not a message, it is a conversation. And, just like any good conversation in a crowded room, the meaning of the words changes depending on who is speaking, what the mood of the room is, and whether the people talking actually feel safe. Your digestion, your mood, your energy, they are all connected outputs of this one continuous conversation.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. What state is your system in right now? Your daily inputs, how you manage stress, how much you sleep, the rhythm of your day, the actual food you eat, they aren't just vague wellness trends. They are direct, active inputs into this biological communication loop. You aren't just feeding a stomach, you are setting the tone for the entire conversation. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a whole new way of looking at your own incredible, integrated system.